Good evening, everyone. This is Professor York, and I'm going to be talking about consultant tools to navigate successful engagements. And there are actually two parts to this discussion. Tonight, we're going to focus on team. Okay, and team stands for specific aspects of really the team process, which I'll go into throughout this discussion. I want you to take away one singular thought. And while I'm not an expert on teams, what I will say is this. I have led and been part of some very, very good, if not great teams, and not so great teams. That happens over a number of years. But I'll tell you what, my takeaway is I understand the importance of good team skills. Good teams are based on good team skills. And that's from a diversity experience, both good and bad. And that includes as a student. When I was in my MBA in particular, I really became very attuned to that. And as a teacher, I make this an integral part of my classes because I feel that they're going to be critical to one's professional and professional success. And for those who are in the entrepreneurship world thinking, I can be independent, many investors and venture capitalists will look at the team and how long that team has been together to tell us that how solid that team is in terms of being able to take that venture forward successfully. And I did have a situation with my second business where we didn't have the right team, and literally we shut down that business in about 18 months because we just were not aligned. So, have you ever been a part of a team that great to work with? I'm sure we all have been, getting high fives. I had a few of them, both in the professional world as well as over in business school. On the other hand is major headaches, and as I mentioned about that team that I worked with at that startup, it can be very painful, to say the least. Well, let me start the journey with a story and a problem, okay? And so we have a situation, and we talk about a complication. So situation is, when I went to business school, I went to IU Kelley, and we had this kickoff week called Kelley Connect Week. And they put us together in teams and went through some team exercises on Sunday, and we're supposed to really build good team feelings. As we went through, we also had this case competition that we were all preparing for, which would be at the end of the week, and pretty intense because we had to do a lot of research, both primary and secondary, and build a recommendation, plan, and presentation, and then practice that presentation to do it well, which you could see the beginning and the end of the process. Despite all the fun things that we set up on Sunday with the team building exercises on the night, having beers over at Nick's, it was a very painful process from a team standpoint. And the team did not come together cohesively. We had different factions that were working and vying for control of the team and activities. We just were not very coordinated. And I find this really interesting because the paradox in business school education is every class we are in, we're thrown into teams. But what I found that was really striking is that we're just not taught enough about good team skills. As I went through business school, actually, we had an epiphany, and actually it was not in a formal class. I was head of the Healthcare Association, or Healthcare Club, and we all wanted to have a retreat in the middle of the winter where it would be warm. I happen to know some people because of my business dealings with the H. Lee Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, and we, as a team of students, were able to set up this really great retreat where we were to network, we were to gain education, provide service. And part of setting this up, we actually built the curricula for it. And I actually had some guidance from a colleague of mine who is part of the Student Leadership Association. His name was Joey Paglawan. And what Joey shared with me was this book. It's called The McKinsey Engagement. And truly was an epiphany because we use it part of our curricula in a program that wasn't even a formal class. And it gave us a structure for us to run after the retreat, a 8-week engagement with the COO and CEO of the Moffitt Cancer Center and deliver tremendous value. To the much part that engagement turned into a course which we call X504, and X504 was taught last year and now is going to be this spring. And the point of this book really focused on those two concepts that we opened the presentation with, which is team and focus. Focus is structure in terms of problem solving and putting together your research and communicating your research, and that's another discussion. But today we're going to talk about team. So, from what our epiphany was, we had a recommendation to our faculty chair at the time, who's now Associate Dean, and said, "Hey, Phil," or Professor Powell, ever thought about using those McKinsey tips with the Kelley students? Thought about it. Yeah, it could be a good idea. So we all wish that we had it, because if we had it, our Kelley Connect week would be less painful, but also we'd be set up to win the case competition. So let's dive in a little further. So let's talk about what makes for a good team. We're going to give you a framework of philosophy and maybe some tools in this discussion. So what does TEAM stand for? TEAM. All right, so give me some feedback. What do you think? All right, so let's launch into this, and we'll proceed as follows. So first thing is T. So T deals with talk, but with talk is listen, and it's active listening. And it's really the most important, if not the most troublesome element of team interactions. Now, what's required to talk effectively is communication that's constant, clear, and honest. It also, on that side of communication, is not just one-way communication, but two-way, which means active listening and asking questions. And then also is, as you have discussions, debates, how do you separate the person from the issues? Because you've got to maintain relationships. So these are very key requirements around talk. Okay, and we'll get into a little more. But some of the tactics that you might think about are, documented contact info, identifying stakeholders, and tying in the team charter, and replace during engagements all throughout the engagement from before to after. But talk also involves respect. How you talk to others on your team is very critical. How people talk to you is critical. So, this separating that person from the issue is, I want to underscore that. And it's not just, respect. It's respect for diversity, differences. Diversity, we think about our relative backgrounds, language, culture, religion, sexual orientation, etc., racial, gender. But it's not just that. It's a communication style. People communicate differently. Okay, and some of it's cultural in nature, so we need to understand that. And then perspective, because based on the frame that we are looking through, we may see the picture a little differently. And that's important to very good communication. So let me tell you a story. So last summer, I was working with a team doing a market research course up at Berkeley. And the interesting thing about this team, as you can see, we all came from different places in the world. I actually wanted to be a part of the team that was there. So Xiaoming was from China. She was a journalist in San Francisco. Carolina was market researcher who had a master's in finance from Chile. And Jib was an attorney from Thailand. Different communication, different styles, different personalities. You couldn't ask for as different and diverse. But, we came together. And we did a really neat job in 5 weeks. And we ended up building this story around Startup Bridge, but more importantly, going together and building the research plan, executing our research or market research plan, which was 16 interviews in 1 week. And then collecting all that data, organizing that data, and putting it into a PowerPoint with a story that netted us all an A+ in that class, which was just amazing. But we worked across, it was not just communication styles, but how do you communicate? And some people didn't have even US cell phone numbers. So how do we work with texting? How do we work across using GoToMeeting to get everybody together? Because that was a way that we could get everybody in one place. So it was an interesting challenge. But you know what? It worked. And because we worked well together, we stay in touch, and we're friends. And Startup Bridge may actually live another life. So I just sort of bring this as a great story in terms of working across diversity. So when you bring together a team, you have to start to think about gathering info early. That's important. It could be via conversations. It could be in a survey. I used from Professor Briggs over at Kelly in our operations management. We put together a really great team where we went and surveyed the team. Before we got our first meeting, I pulled down the data. We talked about the data. We dealt with things like, when do you want to meet, your communication style, when do you want to be a leader in this group, when do you want to be a leader, just different things. What do you want to get out of this experience? And that really set the stage for a very, very successful, because we had like 7 different case studies we had to do over a 10-week period. So we really had to be tight as a team. And part of what we learned in that class of operations management was about team charter. We had 2 teams we were working with actually during that class, which made it a very interesting challenge, but I'm very grateful for that opportunity. So this is the charter that McKinsey uses. The charter that I use in my 2 classes, which is Business 454, which is Senior Project Marketing, and Business 310, which is our Introduction to Entrepreneurship, uses these elements. And in particular, what I try to go is into details around the rules of engagement, because this is really the nitty-gritty. And I encourage the students in my classes to really work through this and get feedback back from me. And I'm very picky down to the level of form, but really so that they have this as an agreement. This is a contract. So you need to ask, what does your charter look like? And do you take it seriously? Because it's very critical. I had early teams that I taught that didn't take the charter seriously, and I could see the problems that involved in their performance at the end of the day. So kicking it off well over talk is the charter. And in fact, my second B310 class, they loved the fact that that gave them a tool in their first, basically, team interaction where they had to talk. So let's talk about E next. So E stands for evaluate, and it's really about evaluating progress towards defined goals. That's both team and individual. And this is critical for team growth. It's required that you not only have your personal team, but you also have milestones that are there. So you have to think tactically from the standpoint of the personalities of your team members. You also think about, do I have project plans and maps, and what feedback am I getting along the way? And what you'll find is, if we look at this again, looking at this quick and dirty roadmap is during. So how are you valuing yourself in your team, and how often? So let's dive in a little deeper. First of all, a process map is a great tool. It's a checklist, so I do encourage that. And this is what McKinsey uses. Okay. In my 454 class, we used in the first week to get them up and going through their first client engagement and their first presentation. So you're talking in 7 days. Team come together, intro letter, got a team lead. They have multiple deliverables that they have to sort out very quickly. And having a roadmap helps a whole lot. But more than a roadmap is a project plan. This is a deliverable that we expect out of our teams. And because what the plan is the specific activities and deliverables, but it gives you benchmarks to evaluate and also who is responsible. It's a tool to be able to visit literally on a weekly basis. So I wonder if you have that, because I think it's very important. So with that, you have to consider that with these tools, no plan is good without an assessment. So you need to have a coach. You need to, as a team, and you evaluating your team, and how are we doing? How are we doing versus our goals? Who's doing what? Who's falling short? Who's overperforming? How do we improve at the end of the day so that we as a team are achieving the goals, whether it's a business goal of starting a business or taking care of a client in client projects? In our class, we use midterm team assessment. I really like the tool of having this, and I think that in corporations they'll have like a midterm review using 360 techniques. And I set it up real simple in midterm in terms of on SurveyMonkey for some basic team feedback, and then a little bit more granular individual feedback. So 7 questions, and then you have 5 open-ended. And we call out for positives and negatives. Now, sometimes you have to watch out when you have this, and individuals are not used to it, and individuals are sharing very open and honest feedback, which gets, because I'm transparent, you might get a square off. And I ran into that actually in 310 with 2 different teams, but I'll just relate one of the stories of the team. So after one class, we had 2 gentlemen who were with one of the teams, and they were a little agitated with each other because of their styles. One was from New York, one was, he traveled the world. He really was very Californian in nature, though. And the Californian nature was much more of, I'm going to say, arts-oriented, very much into ag, etc., where the New Yorker was a business guy, and he was very intense. The problem is, they were so consumed with their styles that they weren't talking with each other. But they got this piece of feedback, and in this piece of feedback that came from different members of the team, each of them got called out for issues that were there. And they were agitated, and they were not happy. And I was told, this was not a really good thing to do the midterm. But I had them sit down and start talking with each other and talk about the team and the goals and what they want to achieve. And I set some goals for them to say, you guys come back on our, and you always have an open door. You guys have to use this as a tool to be able to move your team, because you have a number of challenges as you move forward. Long story short is that I got a note from them, but I also got a note from another team member said that she described the journey of the team, but she said as the team had moved through this storm period and then started to perform, because I saw them getting better and better and better, they also became closer and became friends. So, using this, trying to hide away from, the feedback and have behind the scenes issues is not healthy for teams. You got to talk, you got to have feedback, you need to evaluate, because that's how you're going to move forward. McKinsey uses that post engagements. They're very tough. Many corporations do as well. I've been recipient of many evaluations when I was in corporation, and it helped me learn a lot about myself and how I performed and how I could do better. And I think that's the point of these tools. And another of these tools that we use, I'll just quickly mention, is CATME. And what they do is these 5 different domains in terms of continuing teamwork, interacting with teammates, keeping the team on track, expecting quality, and having relevant KSAs, which are knowledge, skills, and abilities. This is a great tool that is offered through Purdue University. So if you're in the academic side, your professor can get this. This is really a very useful, very detailed tool that really can help with team performance. All right, halfway through, we're into A. So what is A? A is about assist. So what are the key issues? First of all is many times there's confusion around roles. And secondly is that feedback is not provided. And thirdly is that there's overfocus on individual assignments. So the requirements really tie back to these issues in terms of clear roles, timely feedback, and focus on the team versus individuals. And tactically, it would get into load balancing, based on hours to complete the task. But, also is to share the load and to pitch in as needed to encourage that type of contribution and not to have cliques and to engage what we call slackers and outliers and make sure there's defined leadership, which I think is very critical. And this goes throughout the engagement. So, one way you can do it is having a roles and responsibilities tool, which lays out from work stream to data to findings, next steps, and who's responsible. And in the midst of this, you may have to do an audible because someone may be running into some issues. It happens, so you have to look at the changing lives, and that's a really good leader helps that. And as you see, Phil Rivers here, that's the point of an effective quarterback. Because sometimes you need to be able to identify an outlier in the team that needs to be brought in, that the team is not fully accepting, the individual is not fully engaged. There's some disconnect, and I have run into that where we've had individuals who are very good, high-performing, good people, but there's something missing in terms of that connection to the team. And, a number of times I'll sit down and talk with the individual and then figure a way how to onboard that individual so they're no longer the black sheep and, they have a specific task that they're contributing and they're adding value to the group. Or a slacker. And we always watch out for slackers because those are folks who are free riders, and it's the biggest frustration that many teams run into. You need to call it out. It's a hard conversation because the person gets defensive, but it is an important conversation because if it isn't called out, then what happens is there's frustrations and there's various negative repercussions based on that. What I'm getting to is that they really need to define leadership. And I found teams that don't have leaders run into a lot of these type of issues. If you have a leader, a real leader, not a boss, then the leader can make a difference. So, the big question is, are you doing it early? I ask of my teams to have a leader now in my classes. I know that they make a difference. We saw it when we did the first Moffitt engagement. When you work in corporate, usually you have a project team leader. And there's a reason why. And I know a difference between a team that has good leadership and a team that doesn't have leadership. If not, what happens is you are a ship without a rudder. And with that said, you're either sinking or you are running in circles. And if you are not a good leader, then what can happen is you can have cliques, stereotypes, such as we see from the movie Bad Girls or The Breakfast Club. Now, what I like about it, at least in The Breakfast Club, is that the group came together and dealt with some of the trials and tribulations of having to go through, I think it was Saturday Morning Detention. It's a great classic movie. If you have never had a chance to watch it, pick it up. It definitely is a great one. So the question is, how do you handle those issues? And again, it's a good team that looks at it and grabs it, and deals with the assist issue, and leadership there can make a big difference. And with that also is, as I sadly learned in that Kelly Connect week, is we had too many chiefs. And sometimes what we have to sit back is somebody's going to learn to follow. We have to have a discussion of who's going to be the chief and who are going to be Indians, because realistically, at the end of the day, is while we all in business school want to be the leader, the work still needs to get done. The job needs to get done. And so, when you have too many people giving instruction, not enough people doing the work, nothing gets done. So, I think the question is, so who's doing the work? And that's very, very critical. And the last piece is M. So what does M stand for? M stands for there's motivation. Okay? And that different strokes for different folks is the best way of describing it. Everyone's different and motivated by different things. Okay? And there are key features. There are unique motivators for each individual. And you need to build a project around those motivations. Okay? But, you need to tactfully identify primary and secondary motivators for each person and incorporate those and leverage them with those individuals. So that's where a leader really needs to be in those relationships. But using that can help me move forward. And at the end of the day is to reward and celebrate. Very, very critical. And this goes not only during, but afterwards. So here's some examples of motivators. So some people may be driven by, I want to win, or some people want to, earn a lot of money or get a bonus or whatever. Some people may want to have an advancement in their career. In this case, which was taken from the McKinsey engagement, you could see that you're talking about from personal development to having impact to career preparation to being part of something big or just experience, that there were different motivators. So the team lead needed to really make sure that as they were running the project that those needs were being addressed, because if you're addressing those needs, okay, in terms of value proposition, then you're getting you're getting the commitment. I like to use the example of a friend of mine who was going through business school and had actually won the Kelly Connect case competition a few times. And what he said with his teams, the first thing that they sat down and they talked with the team about what's going to drive the individuals. So he would go, I want to win this. Others would say, I want to learn, I want to do a good job. Other people would say, I want to go to Nick's, which was one of the local watering holes, by 9:30 at night. So, with those things inventory, Chris was able to develop a plan to be able to move the team forward. So I think that's just something you need to be mindful of. Because what we recognize is that building a performing team is tough. It really is, from a leadership standpoint, but even from a team standpoint, to make a commitment. It takes work. It just doesn't sit there. And if you're in a program that is just, okay, we're in teams and we're just trying to get through this class, you're going to miss in terms of what the class is offering, but also the skills you're going to gain. But if you get it right, there's a concept we call swing. And you may say, what is swing? Well, in the book called The Boys in the Boat, which talked about the 1936, it discussed the journey of the U.S. gold medal sculling team that won the 1936 Olympics. One of the concepts that was brought out was the concept of swing, which is where everybody is just literally in perfect unison, where everyone's merged into one smoothly working machine. It's in fact a poem of motion, etc. It's just, you lose yourself in terms of your individuality into really the wonder of being part of something even greater, which is this team. So I think that's a key bottom line to think about. How can you achieve swing with your team? Because the top teams that do that are going to perform exceptionally. And those are the teams that are going to be able to achieve the impossible and are going to be able to reap the rewards and the riches and the benefits of whatever endeavor they're taking on. So I close with this: is make your team journey in business school and medical school and whatever, in business, in life, a success. So I'm bringing back the sculling team from 1936 in the University of Washington, which was the team. And I do encourage you to read the book, but try not to be ordinary and strive to be extraordinary. So thanks for your time. I certainly hope that I've stimulated some thoughts. I look forward to further discussion and comments back on this, and hopefully together we'll learn a little bit more. Thank you, and good evening.